to network a bit, to get to know people you haven't met before. So for the second part of today, we will start with a second guest who will give a small speech. Tracy, who is a vote councillor for Belgium. Tracy?
So my aim is not to read you a speech, but I need to keep the structure, otherwise I could go on for ages, and Xander will cut me off. I hope you can all hear me. Today I just wanted to share my journey with you today into politics and how I became an elected councillor, and hopefully inspire other women to join Volt and do the same. So my journey has been a fairly recent one. I have been interested in politics for a very long time. I studied languages and geopolitics at university. I was always out on the streets campaigning when I felt there was an injustice. But I never really found or never really wanted to become a member of a party. I felt like I hadn't really found something that suited me. And that's, until fairly recently, until I came across Volt. Then, of course, one major event really, really affected me and, let's say, woke me up, and that was Brexit in 2016. It sent shockwaves through, Britain. It divided not just our nation, but families, including my own. I couldn't speak to some members of my family for many months because they had voted for Brexit. And discussing with other friends, I heard similar stories. So I really felt that, I needed to do something to stop Brexit happening in other countries. In 2018, I became Belgian, and that's really the positive of this Brexit story. Why? Because it really made me integrate more into the local community. I suddenly started to feel I was putting down my roots. I suddenly became really interested in what was happening in my community instead of, having one foot in Belgium and one foot in the UK. It was, right, I'm Belgian now. I'm European. I believe in the European project. And I love my community. And that was the kind of switch I made after Brexit. So then within the community, I started sort of like, taking more of an active role and joining things. And as I say, integrating, speaking more the language. My husband is Flemish. He's Belgian. My child goes to a local school. We've been living in Tervuren since 2009. And after Brexit, I really started to take more active role in the community. I became more and more frustrated. I wanted to become involved. I felt as an international person within the community that I was still locked out of some of the decision making, that I wasn't aware of some of the decisions before they were taken, and I wanted to be part of that. So I started looking at local parties. I even spoke to a few. They just before the elections, about a year before the elections, I approached a local party and I said, look, I want to be on the list. And they said, you could be number 20 on the list. But for me, that wasn't enough. And then I found other kindred spirits in Tervuren. So David Abiago, who's not here, Magdalena Grozhinska, who's unfortunately also not here. But together, the three of us founded Volt Tervuren in May the 6th last year. And then we stood for the Flemish elections first. And that was a great way to test the waters. We were with little campaigning because, we didn't have much time between setting up Volt Tervuren and the Flemish Parliament elections. So with little campaigning, we received quite a large number of votes between the three of us. And that gave us the impetus to start for the local elections. Now, I want to put this all in context and explain to you a bit about Tervuren. So Tervuren has about just over 15,500 inhabitants. You will probably be amazed, although some of you who know me have already heard these statistics before, you'll be amazed to know that 44% of the population in Tervuren is of non-Belgian origin. So that includes naturalized Belgians like myself. If you take away the naturalized Belgians, you have 25% of the population. That's still a quarter. That's huge. And yet we had never, ever had any representation at local council level. And for me, this was, when I was told those statistics, that was like fuel to my fire. I was like, no, I pay my tax. We pay, let's face it, we pay huge amounts of tax in Belgium. And you know, that resounding adage from Obama, who says, you know, no taxation without representation, that started ringing my head. How can it be we've got 44% in Tervuren who are of non-Belgian origin and no representation, and never had in the council? So that's basically where we started, and we campaigned hard. And I can tell you, believe it or not, the leafy, lovely, leafy, pretty suburb of Tervuren, we fought a very aggressive campaign, one that as a woman, I was, and as a human being, let's say, I was not prepared for at all. I'd never been in politics before. I just went into politics because I believed and I wanted to change something. And the aggression we got, you're not welcome here. You want to change our council. You want to make it all in English. We don't want you. You're only here to work for a few years and then you'll leave. There are so many myths surrounding the international community in Tervuren. We're not here to stay. We don't want to integrate. We don't want to speak languages. That I felt, you know, I had to actually challenge those. And that's what I continue to do. So, you know, the result was not as we had hoped. We had hoped for 2 seats for Volt. I was not elected immediately. We had a young woman who came from number 27 from the coalition party up to number 3, and she could not stand because her father was the first candidate elected. So then I had to wait for several weeks, and many of you already know this from like asking me, when can we announce? When can we announce? I had to wait for several weeks before we could make the announcement that Volt had a seat. But we do. We have the seat. And there are some ongoing challenges. And one of the things that we've learned from this experience is that, you know, it is very difficult for small parties to make inroads into politics in Belgium. And we had to go into a coalition with Tervuren Unie, a party that had been in Tervuren for 30 years, had roots in the Francophone side of things. And we had to go into coalition with them in order to get the seat we have. We would not have managed it had we gone alone as a new party only established in May of that year. So, voila. And the challenges now are still many. We have to still activate people in Tervuren. I'm looking at Richard. I do have the amazing support of Volt, people from Volt Belgium. We've created a working group. We will try to meet from now on. We've already met some people, Bianca, Richard, Harlow. You're not in the group at the moment, but you've been very, very supportive in helping me set up and understand what it is to be working in a fractie, and you know how it's going to work within the gemeenteraad and so on. So we will continue with that and meet every 2 weeks. But we need to absolutely have to keep up our visibility, because we're not communicating enough at the moment. And as we don't communicate, the other parties, they've realized that there are international people in Tavera, and they've woken up. We've made them, as Volt, wake up to to the notion that there is a huge international community and we are there to stay. So you better engage with us. And they have started to engage where we are currently not. We cannot remain silent going forward. We need to start not just showing up. I mean, I'm trying to, as a local council, I'm showing up to lots of events. I'm doing lots of volunteering in the community. I have some casework to do from people who contact me. It's not enough. We need to be on the social media platforms and make sure we have an ongoing visibility over the next 4 years. And voila. So if anyone wants to join the working group, or if you've got specific social media skills and you've got a few hours, let me know. And, use Taburin as our test case to springboard to hopefully, net more elected officials in more gemeenten and councils. Thank you for listening.
Very much. Okay, now we can move on to the next part. As you all know, we have a government in Belgium at last. And we also, during this GA, we wanted to have a discussion, and where it was quite clear that the discussion should be about the new Belgian government and what the possible implications could be or can be for Belgium and also for Europe. So therefore, I'd like to welcome to the stage the person who will participate. This will be, is Susanna Gar present? Ah, okay. Susanna Gar, Jonathan Renaud, Laurence de Meulen, and Charles de Groot.
There's a lot of food left over, so you make it, you mentioned that afterwards you only please take the food to the you don't want any leftovers. But moving on to the details, thank you very much for accepting our invitation. I know it's a little bit last minute, but I'm so grateful that you still able to come here this afternoon to participate in our debate. Yes, we have a new Belgian government. What does it mean for Belgium? What does it mean for Europe? There's a lot of open questions. Parliamentarians have been debating for 40 hours straight on, and no one in Belgium knows actually watching their discussion what actually and I think there's now a lot of people, a lot of intelligent people trying to now analyze the agreement between the different parties. Who here knows how many? One? No, it's not just one. Two. You know, the five, indeed, there's 5 parties, and stretching from all the way to the right nationalist and the other. Two was so when now called, of course, it's also inside. There's a lot of different parties, there's a lot of different ideas. I don't even know how they found that even in the first place. It only took 7 months. I mean, it's not the record yet. We understand. The Belgian holds the Democratic Council the record in longest time without the federal government. I'm glad it didn't happen this time, but who knows? There will be snap elections soon again because they'll fall apart and they realize. But let me introduce our speakers. I'll go one by one, also with the starting questions, so you have a little bit of time. This, I'm going to some questions for each of you to start, and then we'll open up the discussion a little bit. There will be a lot of time for you to ask questions, but certainly seeing this morning, yeah. Okay, so, let's do it. Susan, you've been a member of the you've been running and trying to be a personal between policies last year, and I think you already did a great job in talking to a lot of citizens, hearing what their needs are, and also realizing what there is a very big need in Belgium for new parties. Professionally, you also work as a deputy director of retail, I believe. So you're like, now, this argument was how would you see the government and the business situation?
Hi everyone, glad to be here. There's nothing to regret. So I'm still recovering from the super electoral year 2024, but I wouldn't have made it to without the now, but to your question, how do I see the Zimbabwe government really taking in with broader, let's say, European countries, but I said the independent people, more broader than that, let's say the best key words within the European Union nowadays. And so I think in that regard, we actually see a very similar trend that's dominating a lot of the discussions of the government program for the developing government. So what do I think about that? We're hearing that there's a signification agenda at the European Union level that's going to be promoted over the next 5 years. And so we're also seeing this signification agenda very differently in the developing government. So purely the issue of having open bureaucratic institutions before going on to the development of the thing over the same with the European Union, because there's a lot for the need to difficult to navigate. So what we're seeing is that although the two are especially quite different in their especially withdrawing arrangements for the time being, so there's not what's happening in the future. But I would say the direction is quite similar. The new government is actually trying to fix some of the issues that have been criticized when it comes to effectiveness of the business environment in Belgium. While the European Union is also trying to tackle the same concerns, but they're doing it differently. But it's important to know that because it's actually an alignment of the narrative level, and I think people should actually take note of and be relatively concerned about, but certainly be on the lookout for the exact method how this will play out. I would say there's also a trend to the broader global, right? Because it's not just the European Union that has a new mandate, but it's also the US that has a new mandate this month, so that's very strong ideology behind it. And as part of that ideology, we're seeing also some right? And so when I look at the government of that, I see also things that in business, some of the democratic institutions, so again, it's never quite exactly the same, but it's important to know that the trends are the same. And last but not least, and this is knowledge that has come from minority government, but unfortunately, minority government is headed by a party that is at the European level. This will increase the presence of PCR in the European constitution, which still have repercussions for the rest of Europe. Still have to see how it's going to play out. So I will leave it there for now. There's so much more to be said, but I'm sure that my colleagues will really have
Thank you very much, Susan, for your introduction, for your opening. It's a really interesting point that we'll touch upon later on. Now, actually, it's a brief introduction of the law. who's an assistant to the local education parliament, but he's been also working in another life. He's been working in the cabinet of the previous Belgian government. He's not going to be and the previous government, he's going to sustainability and environment. I'm pleased to hear comparing the previous government with the new government. What do you see on the right? What do you see as striking differences? I think that always comes from the top. Yeah, it was very well. So there are a lot of bridges to those and I mean, it's a problem which I don't and for all the urban agreements, I have no pressure and it was super on here. So everything had to be made within the government itself and then they brought it together to exactly what we say, very populistic force influence in development, made it actually development fair. Reform, we didn't agree on reform, but we luckily we did some reforms like it's that this government takes some steps back on the people that was follow the hybrid cars to be allowed to do them, which means that there will be just and those like big problems I would say or green problems are not really that. There are other stuff on taxation, yeah, that are good, but as they take steps towards more judicial reform, but the plans that were developed, like, there's the package also, the package for the that's one thing. The second thing is that we see I have a lot of good ideas, also green ideas, single ideas in the government agreement. The budget indicators. Yeah, you know, for example, let's say, yeah, we're going to strengthen MBS and trains, we're going to ensure that the connection of airports with high-speed connections with other but we're also going to cut back on the funding right here. So, I think there are some authoritarian groups that if they can take steps in the right direction. There's still a lot of contradictions in the government agreement. It's much bigger as the government agreement of the value of communications, the government agreement of the United States. Now it's much more detailed, but still within that government agreement, it seems on this day that the debates are open and that we appreciate and yeah, whatever we described, but still in the elaborate description, we use other things. And there are papers in my deck that I signed that say other things than agreed upon in the government agreement. So I predict that this will be a government agreement with all fighting, and I'm quite convinced that they won't make the end of the term, and I'm also quite convinced that with the growth and the fall earlier, we had again separate elections between the regional and the federal level. I think there's also, we should not forget that NVR, they have now some kind of bolster that are, government and here, not on the local level, but behind it, there will always be the other side of strength in the region, and that will get it around. I think we will many thanks for that. Because we should uncomfortable.
Can everybody speak a little bit closer to the microphone, please? Yes, thank you. Lovely.
Well, thank you guys for the introduction. I've been in the details. So we better be prepared. Everyone who is wanting to learn policy very important. We can prepare in the last. I will mention, I do get the revelation. When restrained and the government that Are the cultures speaking I Belgium, how to scale this, I think most of the politicians about. Yeah, I know, and yeah, but you said it might be something more. So like it's child is good. You know, like he's a little bit possible. He recently founded a new party, Uni, and it's the company was running both in June for the federal and also good on Belgium. So, confident that vision, continuing in English. So yes, we launched last year. So now we're going to the last year that we are doing like there is, and I don't know, like what is just on board with the backbone, and this, the separation between people. Very good that we have, and we rapidly leverage for example, and directly afterwards because it's okay. For there, the stuff of yeah, it's not like a road. This is something that we back in the day did not know. But now we are aware of that. It's about my vision. Yes, I wrote a book at age 22. It's for soccer and my family. I thought it that's another. But yes, I believe it's the vision of bringing people together. It's very difficult to see how they can use against each other. This is something that I want to discuss. And the project that I created, and I think that was really focused on was to bridge the divide that in mind that something that we strengthen. very important and that we should also go for. In my book, I would write an entire section about the constitution, how it should change. So, of course, after we come to the United States, I believe that we should have one government, six, seven parliaments, maybe a bit too much, and we should down. And why? Because by simplifying the state, you also make it much more social. People will also feel more aligned also what they want to do, and finding that it's more motivating. Yeah, it is important. It's a relatively wealthy nation, but we are seeing that around with the different and open. Yeah, but the national support system is possible. As you also I interview, but probably not by saying they are stupid. They use tools like direct marketing. So we have to compare with we have a lot of traditional parties with they're very strong efforts. We have to find something else. Here at democracy, we go to something better. And thank you very much for thank you. One question was Susanna and Laura. And the mobility and political how big issues for the regular citizens in the for the workers, for the companies as well. We know that we see that without heavy prices now, the powers of traveling in Belgium as a be it a student, be it as a worker, have also become increasingly more expensive. When we get started, there's always works and other rules. How do you see this new government?
So my second question on energy budget. Perhaps we take that stuff not just about the problem, but the European problem, and the other important we also do have to be regardless of, right? So why are energy prices so expensive in Europe? So our current prices in America are electricity five up to prices of fossil fuels in particular. And so the last report from the last European map for the electricity market. And unfortunately, the European Union is confused what will have in this or any other country. But effectively, we are operating with a broken pricing model. We don't talk about wanting to very quickly back to the point. What they're doing is actually quite interesting, and I think some voters in the room are really of the developed government. They have expenditure. They're going to be investing in the research. I think there's numbers here in the room to certainly applaud that. The point is that thousands is contract have carbon free electricity when you add that together with the businesses that are together with other investments. This country is headed for carbon free electricity. So therefore, an electricity pricing model that ties it to the gas market is not going to serve it. So therefore, on one hand, I would say, well, I would expect Belgium to therefore be a strong force in favor of reforming the European electricity pricing model because it's not going to work for Belgium. The other aspect that I think is missing, unfortunately, from the government's agreement is, okay, let's take the question of energy development for the country. What about the chemical industry in Belgium? This is a huge energy source for the entire European Union. They have not actually been consequences on climate, as we've done in the past work. And so can there be a way to fix profit? So let's say We know what needs to be done on together. This is very together because we've got some, let's shift our industry leader in Belgium and using that as a lever to be able to across the EU. And look, maybe because the question has been addressed to both of us, I think it's fair that for now I stop here, and then if you don't address the I'm happy to keep them on that as well, but I guess I will. So let's make everybody.
Thank you, for and we can say that we not have inside of the business what our needs are out. So instead, we'll have to see where the government will play a significant role in order to have this new energy model and power. Because as I said, there are no other energy, water sources of energy. Our prices are tied to the carbon fossil fuel. So, Laura, what do you see in this regard? What do you think about what Susanna just told you or told us? On the whole nuclear debate in this government, as well as on the question of transitioning to so this affects the transition we need our energy system goes off money. We invest in our grids, we invest in offshore. So this is something that for coming decades will ask of investment in the role building of new industry from offshore wind energy to land, and those investments have to be made, and they are all it all boils down to our this is how we solve it and how we make it feasible. And what we see at this moment, I think, is that there are a lot of weak dreams and mirage within the government. They look, we're going to ensure 4 gigawatts of nuclear. Too expensive to build new nuclear power plants. So how are they thinking of financing that? How are they thinking of finding a furnace to build those nuclear power plants? Where are we going to build them? It's build plans to be developed over coming decades, and they will not solve our needs today. And it's good that they advocate to keep the current power plants open for 10 years, but it's all won't be easy because emphasis we don't on that. It's also going up for the Belgian taxpayers. And I think there the bills are not correct, and it will again when it comes to the transition, you see that there are a lot of quite good reduction of PDA to income, higher PDA over and all. What do you call it in the investments for industry? You can have to if you do green investments, you can deduct more from your taxes. Which kind of then of course the there I think our government is really lacking incentives. There's some wording, there is wording, but when it comes to the structural, fiscal reform, for those type of businesses, and government, right? Really, that on mobility level, we want,
thank you very much, Lawrence. Already an applause to you for your amazing response. So there is some room for optimism in certain regards when it comes to energy prices and mobility. Energy prices, and I don't know who here really has, I don't know who here really has, but I don't. Probably will all have to do with it. Because is every house and have mobility? No. How do we do it? Can we enforce what people have to pay fines? That can be seen, as I said. The hook is not very clearly defined, and some fields like mobility, public transport, inclusive mobility, can be left out. So for all the geeks here, now is the moment to take notes, and we, as Progressive Party, need to make sure that this is on top of the electoral campaign, the next one. So people that feel completely left out by the government parties, they have a refuge to go for and campaign and be optimistic. Thank you very much for doing it.
yeah, say one more thing, on mobility, there's a big ideological question, how we tackle, transport. We work on demand side, or we create demand. And I think now I said, look, we're going to work on where is demand, and we're going to organize demand there. And then other regions in Belgium, in Romania, in Flanders, in the externalities, they're going to close train stations, like they focus more on the core regions. Then, of course, if there's no public transport at all, you can't have demand. So the creating demand, the solving demand question is very diverse.
Okay, we'll have room for questions afterwards. At least some people want to really respond. We have plenty of time. We have, I think, another 14 minutes or so. So I'll move on in a second to Charles and Jonathan. But I just want to say, coming also from one nationality being German, they have this paradox of the Autobahn, the highway, doesn't need to make profit. It is there as a public good. While the German train is considered a company and needs to return profit for the shareholder. Is the role of public transport to make money for the state or to be as an investment that we invest into the people, the mobility, sustainability? A hospital, police, firemen, and firewomen, they also cost, but we invest it because we see that the return on the population is greater than what we put into it. So thank you very much for those considerations. I want to move over to Charles and Jonathan about the state reform and also for the vision. As you said, or as you already heard, there's a lot of talk about state reform. Sometimes it's just up there, sometimes there might be some changes. But I also want to touch upon our role as citizens here. The Senate so far was not directly elected. Right? It was not directly elected, so removing it would not mean we have one less vote to do. But at the moment, we have the European, federal, and regional elections all on the same day. Then we have the provincial and the local elections again on the same day, and lastly, we have all on the same year. That means basically for the last 5 years and for the next 5 years, there is no participation whatsoever from citizens. And the question is, now that we have snap elections, will that make a significant break to this continuous cycle of we voted once, then we as citizens have nothing more to say? What is your feeling about the participation of citizens in politics in Belgium? Do you think that the new government is open for more direct democracy, for more citizen participation? Would you say that there is room for, let's say, splitting of the different elections? Now, with snap elections, it will definitely not fall the same way as between the elections. But will the new government be open to that? Or will they say, no, we want to keep it as monetary, financially wise, efficient, and keep it as much as possible? So, I don't know who wants to answer first, Charles or Jonathan? Jonathan, would you like to answer?
I'm going to try to convince you in why it's a shame that we are at a meeting. What you need to know is that, so pretty much there are two arguments on the side, arguments from right. You know the federal parliament, the two chambers, the House of Representatives, and the Senate. people that are going to say, well, you have more intelligence in two brains instead of one. Different assemblies because you have two different types of debates, and so in the end you can reach the best side. The side against it is saying, well, why do we need to, spend all this public money on people that are elected, and then it costs a lot, it needs a lot of staff, and so if pretty much one head can decide as well as two heads, then why not having one? In 2014, the last stage before, there was this question of what are we going to do about the Senate? In 2014, they pretty much decided to do nothing, which means that today, the Senate has no role. There like is something that very we don't again, I'm not sure you're going to talk about that like we have the federal and the European election. Well, um, separate the election because we don't the election.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Jonathan. How do you see it?
Well, actually, in the book, I talked about how we should have one of citizens' parliament, but I think it only makes sense if the federal parliament has more power. Today, besides some fiscal policy, defense, uh, the federal parliament is, how would you say it in English, very thin. And so we already have the regions, and the regions have so much power, which I deplore, because I think that it is one of the reasons why we're so divided. There's always this question, which regards, is Belgium so divided because it has so many governments, or do Belgians have so many governments because it is so divided? I believe that. Thank you. But this is why I also think that yes, it would be better to have a parliament. That's concerning looking at what we have to do. It may be better to get rid of it. Why? Because it creates this populist mentality of we have 45 million euros, 45 million euros, and nobody knows even the presidents. There is now a new president of the Senate, Vincent Bell. Most people probably don't know this. And I think that this comes back to a bit the questions about democracy, which different parties need to try to tackle. New parties come, why? Because there is a deficiency, because we feel that the traditional parties do not speak for us, because we feel that even the extremes do not speak for us. And that is where I think that getting rid of the Senate is people the idea that, okay, even the parties that already exist are changing something. Now, there's the other question about the elections, the election days. I completely agree with you. I experienced it here in Brussels. People were talking about Brussels, they're not talking what I think many people do from the European question very interesting. And splitting them up, but also not everything in the same year, because I think, crazy. You also felt it that many people do not vote in your community because people have expected. In my community, 7,000 people, the biggest party in Overijs are the people who did not go vote. And I think that tells also something about the democratic deficit that we create by having so many elections at the same time. People don't even know what the differences are. And as I think goes back to also what people want to see happen. Do people want to understand what the different governments do? If we are in this federal architecture, which I do not like, we are in it. Do people want to know? Okay, I know that the regional government does mobility, does a few things about energy, but at the end of the day, getting mobility is always federal level. I think that it is much better to split them up so that people also know what the competencies are per governments, and that will also improve our democratic. So I think we have to go back to the question of democratic deficit. How do we improve that to give citizens more hope in their institutions? And once people have hope, then they can also collaborate, organize, and help make sure that change is possible, not only at the local level, but at the national level. But that takes a few years, but I'm sure that both and on the same time, really will. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So before opening the floor to the attendees, I would like to just see if you want some water too, or do you want to respond to that? I'll just allow our speakers to respond to each other very briefly,
Yes.
and then we can open the floor for questions. We still have more than half an hour of the time.
First question in the negotiation round was, is this a federal country? And then there was nobody. The MPA said, no, it's no, and I just said, whatever, yes, no, and then, okay, let's ask for an opinion. And then America asked an opinion, the MPA asked an opinion, the other opinion, and there were three different opinions, whether it was federal, according to the federal conference or not. So I think that the problem today is that all the competencies are distributed among everything, but distributed, and a much clearer division would also help to shape the American debate and keep going through the elections, because elections won't solve everything, because all the things that some kind of debated as well at that moment, because the division is not so clear. I think that's really a problem. That's what from the experience. And we lost months sometimes for one regulation before we kind of agreed, okay, we can do something to the democratic process.
Right. So everyone wants to have a say, but no one wants to be responsible for it. Susanna, please.
Yes, maybe just to add another layer to the conversation, because the democratic deficit, can arise from multiple sources. And I recall that Belgium has been criticized by the Venice Commission for being one of the countries where the parliament, the Chamber of Deputies, self-validates itself. This is not common. This is not normal. You usually have another institution that sort of validates. And The point of having two chambers is that one exercises control over the other. Somehow, there is a scrutiny between the two chambers. That's generally in countries that have two parliaments, including the UK, including Romania, including France. Like, there is a dialogue between the two that, just abolishing one without introducing another institution that will perform some sort of scrutiny over the remaining parliament that is self-validating, that can actually exacerbate the democratic deficit, right? So it's a complex issue. So that's why what I've appreciated very much from my co-panelists is that they both put forward ideas that basically say abolishing the Senate is not enough. That is a step, but you need to introduce something else in exchange. There has to be something more because someone has to exercise some sort of scrutiny upon the main parliament, and that remains there. You can't just sort of allow it to self-validate, and then for 5 years there's no sort of check on it from any kind of other institution. So yeah, those are just my sense. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Susanna. All right. Unless Charles or Jonathan want to say anything else, we can perhaps open the floor to the attendees. We will try to go gender balance. We'll start with the woman, because I think a lot of men talked already today. And so we'll want to hear from a woman first, and then we go balanced. Please, when you address the panel, please say your name, where you're from, and also whom you would like to pose the question. Please, only questions. We had a lot of statements today. So just a question about what you would like to know from them, what you would like to learn from them, and what the vision would be for instance. Yes, Erika.
Thank you. I'm Erika, together with Marie, we are coordinating the network. And I have a question on the market. We have heard from the you can all reply and contribute to the general question. There's a lot of investments are actually needed. That there are some plans to cut budgets, for example, for the train or in the social security system. But will all of these cuts be sufficient to cover all the investments that we will need? And related to this question, all these cuts in the social security system that are foreseen, how is for us actually managing this with their electorate? And can voice be an alternative for them if they get disappointed? And then I found it also interesting that you said that a lot of decision making is ideology based in Belgium. And I found it interesting that one of our board members who works in the statistical office in Belgium was saying that actually Belgium does not have that many statistics. Because the figures are collected in a very scattered way, so nobody really has an overview. So necessarily the decisions are made on an ideological basis because you have no facts.
Thank you, Erika, for the question. Who of the panelists would like to answer, or should we first have a second question and then you can reflect a little bit in the meantime about this first question? Okay, let's take first the second question and then we can respond. Name, where you're from, and please concise. Thank you very much. Then shall we start with Lawrence and Jonathan about the first question?
I think there are some good things, and it's good that there are some very long back that had a bit of say like a very good change. And give one example. One example is that people who work for MBS, electors, can retire at 65 years. And I was negotiated in the new contract with MBS, and we talked about it, and there are always like the history where the group and the 65 years, someone will be beginning, and MBS was founded, and then correct, and it doesn't close. And by 55, they were already there. So that still stands to this day. They elect from some external power. So it's good that those types of unbalanced approaches are also when it comes to civil servants, expansion of civil servants, not only the million, but also to the real rate of income of the world in civil service. If they get a rate of the pension, right, also together. It is as it is something you can talk about $3. If you start a company and you retire, then your pension would be linked to the wages of the people in that company. So there are some range historical measures that is that we have reform for pensions, we have reform for our hundred the pension is down, and I think you can question there is really a reform that gives the strong incentive to strong children. I see that's mostly on society that this about I think 3 billion on the research shows and 5 billion that there is lost and any for the environment because and your question is realistic or the benefits realistic and as I said before there are a lot of neuritis. There are a lot of problematic feedback effects that are calculated just can be turned into even we now we need 3 billion we have 3 billion to pay back effects even by these economics like Vietnam is not realistic. I will have to look for and in the back of their head is that okay, it's kind of as balanced as possible. I think I know that move that further, right? And I think there, as well as the political debate, both and all progressive parties will need a strong voice to really focus how further right is the government going to evolve when it comes to.
Thank you.
So, starting with Erica's questions, will the funds be sufficient to make operating deficit? I would just say no, but they're signaling a change in vision for the economy. And so I think that's where some dynamism can be maybe brought into the wider economic activity of the country. So I guess time will tell, but you can't actually just fully make up for a deficit in that way. But now to your second question, which I think is super interesting, and we haven't fully discussed it, though we should, as being such a modern party. So, in the world, you say this, in the world where facts are not listened to and politicians decide by ideology, how can we still make sense of the direction of politics? And here, there's like 3 points that I see. I see citizens, I see government, and then I see these facts. And the interesting thing is that politicians are interpreting the relationship between citizens and facts through their political ideology, and then they put forward something like a government plan. The question is, do we need that mediation? And I'm not asking this to make Charles upset, who wants more power to the government. But one who watches Belgian politics and sees that the country is able to run itself for extended periods of time, run even EU presidencies and so on, at some point you nearly end up asking yourself, do we still need government in the traditional sense of government, or can we envision a new form of government emerging where, information about society is facilitated by statistics or facts and then there's consultation with citizens. I don't know. But broadly speaking, I think the global trend seems to be towards ignoring all facts and acting solely on ideology, which is why I'm proposing sort of going, if possible, in the opposite direction. And finally, to Andre's question, should voting be obligatory? I would say all Belgium's position should be that that obligation should be removed. Why? Because in talking to a lot of EU citizens while I was trying to collect signatures to enter the European elections, many of them, so most of the European citizens who live in Belgium, don't take part in electoral processes in the country of their residence where they pay taxes, where they would like to have a say, because they're scared of this obligation because it's not common. They grew up in countries where voting is not obligatory, so they don't really know what will happen. There's a big part of an explanation that had to happen there every time. You can register where you probably won't get a fine because the fines have been annulled. But so from our perspective as a party that has also a very pro-European, pan-European vision as well as membership, we should probably ask for this obligation to be removed so that our own constituency grows significantly.
Thank you, Susanna. I actually disagree.
Oh,
I think that
closer.
No, I think that as a Belgian, I find it a pride. For me, it's something that you learn it in school that whatever happens, whatever your ideas, you have to go vote. So you might as well inform yourself. And I think that this opens up the possibility to go vote to thousands of people or millions of people who would otherwise just decide to stay home because the only thing that they know is politicians bickering in the website esteem, and they don't themselves participate. By forcing people to participate in the democratic process, you also make sure that they become interested in the democratic process. And I think that as a Belgian, I'm very in favor of this. Even if people just vote for a blank party, or they go there and they do not vote for any party, I think that it is something that we should, instead of going against this, we should actually promote it in the EU, because by forcing people to go vote, by getting people to go vote, they participate in society, in the democratic processes. And I can only endorse this as a Belgian, and I can only endorse making sure that the Flemish local elections become mandatory again, so that we can make sure that people also engage in these local elections. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? Is a woman as well?
Can I just ask?
Yes.
Yeah, so now I'm going to take my hat of working at the European Parliament within the law delegation. Now, I'm something that Susan would say. Completely opposite. So, going to the onboarding here for. I mean, I work with many of them in Scotland, but it's something that I'm constantly reminded every day that importance and involvement, all of the science-based and fact. We have a strong ideology of being pro-European. We don't have we always need to satisfy the certain competitive interests. We are always looking to take the right decision. That's something that is really, really strong. And I can really see it though, as you know, in the European Parliament, there are a lot of Greens, and I think it took a lot enough with the Greens because I strongly believe that the Greens are really right. They are really taking a decision on a certain topic. They're really looking at what the scientific community will say, and then they take a decision at home. We get some cases where we can see that voting different public grids because they take this more fact-based approach. And I think it's very strong. That's something that's one very good about vote. We can do this in and so I think it's really something that very strong message that people can right? And yeah, so maybe we should definitely go.
Okay, two questions. I see Tracy first, and then Liam.
Just we want to start how we did it. Because
Even Italian will translate.
I just want to make an observation about it's not necessarily the mandation university, although it's definitely made a difference in where we normally had in 97% turnout and that was 64%. So we feel as voting that's lots of seats, given that that's non-mandatory population. But I would say that both should consider getting behind the automatic registration for voting. So when we register as a commune, we all automatically are registered to vote. Because this is not happening at the time, and I personally had to spend a lot of time campaigning, letting people be raising awareness that they could vote in the first instance, and then how they could register to vote. I think, let's leave that in the garden and get registration automatic.
Hi there, my name is Leon Mark, and I teach history. The first is regarding development center. So in Ireland, we had a referendum back in 2013 to abolish our Senate. And initially, the article 4 of Ireland, the plan was it's a waste of money, it's inaccessible, community level level. And ultimately, we voted to keep it because all the suspicions about this was there was no option on the table to actually afford it. And now it seems that by centralized government during the kind of austerity and the financial crisis to essentially all centralized power. So at the risk of sounding ill, naive, and silly and idealistic, if this decision is going to be made by the thousand people unilaterally without consulting people, is there any point, any feasibility in a nationwide campaign to keep the thousands and reform? My second question, you mentioned child. So you mentioned the idea of putting children to families, and again, we have used some by the fact in Ireland, most notably reforming our laws on access to abortion. But the key behind this success was they were going for very specific purposes to reform one law or one area of legislation. So would you envisage a citizens assembly as a permanent body or a specific temporary body for different areas of policy?
Let's open the floor to the panel speakers who would like to respond to, on one hand, Tracy's statement and Liam's question.
I want to very quickly react to Tracy's statement because I totally agree with you. And we've discussed it at the GABS that we should have automatic registration. However, for as long as voting is obligatory, that's not actually possible. So that's why the two are actually linked. And I think what gives us a really good standing is the Constitutional Court of Jurisprudence, so to say, on the voting for 16 to 18-year-olds in the European elections. I believe so, did not actually, at first they wanted it to be with the registration, but that was considered non-constitutional for Belgians. on their vote. So therefore, you've got the ground to say, well, users don't also need to register. This is automatically registered. And then I think there's also something to be said about obligativity in that case. But yeah, the problem is exactly, for as long as it's mandatory, you can't automatically subscribe people to an obligation that then might have repercussions upon them. If you're distant, you're creating a blockage for them to register in the first place. You might not want to register; they're scared. You see, so that's why I think it's important to remove the obligativity of it, to then have automatic registration. But nothing that's really. Okay, so that was the quick reaction to Casey, and then for the other questions.
I'll also revert back to your question. I think that you are absolutely right that having automatic registration makes sense. But if it's not automatic, and this is something that we learned during our annual election in Overijs, you have to organize yourself. And I think that this is something where you as all people, too much. I think that this is something that you can actually do and that will be looked at very positively. If you can make sure that in Seville 1,000 people register to vote by the next election, people will look at you and say, "Oh, these are people who are trying to integrate." This is, I think, the same discussions that we had in Overijs. People thought, these are people who are trying to impose something on ourselves, and this is for a lot of people, they are scared of this. But if you come with the opposite, and you say, "Well, I'm trying to integrate people into society, making them vote, making them participate in society," then you're going to get much better, how would I say, results from people who say, "Okay, this is actually quite good." It's not a top-down approach; it's a bottom-up. Your question about the citizen assemblies, I think it is a small. We're a bit in a niche topic right now. I don't think that most people are looking forward to in a small assembly, etc. But on a theoretical level, I think that you are correct. It would be better. But be careful. Do not make it something that is technical, where only experts can join it. Make sure that it is people who are taking at random, and that they can then speak about it. I will say though, having been in a local council, I have heard a lot of things that in most places I would never hear, because when you are, door knocking, you hear from things that you would never hear. You thought that, were from the 16th century. But this is also something that you need to, when you open up the democratic process to everybody, you should also be ready to accept everything that people were saying. But I think that as Belgians, we were one of the first countries who also had democracy, even though it was only for 30,000 members. It was the beginning of something that was bigger, and I think that if you're trying to think bigger, having citizens' assemblies is a part of that.
Yeah, maybe we can take a few questions.
Who wants to have some more questions? Do we have any more women that would like to ask a question? Then we would like to invite Gamal and Georgia to ask a question. But please keep it concise. We only have 8 more minutes.
Now, we talked about it. It's important for vote. In Belarus, actually elected based on this. They have big costs on immigration. There is changing in policies of what the FD has done in the past years. They want to withdraw from the Moroccan agreement. How do you see it? I mean, will this all make sense?
Who would like to take on the question? But first, we take the question by Giorgio.
Of the crowd, 20 years of theater. So, Ukraine, I've gone through the agreements very fast. I don't find anything specific. You might be aware, I hope, there's going to be a ceasefire. And in the plans for the ceasefire, they foresee that European armies would have to step into Ukraine. Because Americans won't come, NATO won't come. Have you spotted anything in the agreement, and what are your views about sending boots on the ground to defend the ceasefire?
We're going to keep saying that here to the
I mean, all these mayors who list that they put their party influence to the federal level to get maximum
Heike, could you use the microphone?
all those mayors in Belgium who admitted that they took their power from the national party to get maximum for the city. Is that would you want this based on more rational principle than like who has this mayor and this party? So that's something that we need to convert.
If there's no more questions, we'll keep it at that. Otherwise, one last question, then we'll take it, and then we can each also respond and have a closing word.
My name is Martin. I come from a small town called Belgium. How do you, my question for you, Charles, how do the people in Belgium feel like Brussels is far away from them? They see Brussels as a dangerous place where people run around.
It is. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Right, again, I think maybe direct the migration was important. Yes, so I think that it's very, you can see it in the government agreements, and I want to relate to also the difference, before I worked at the European Parliament, I was doing here, bar. I want to relate that also in the way that they see, criminal justice. They see in this government that there is a nothing that we need to know, that we back into our community, into our society, rather than just standing there from there. And my question, just begin by experience from working in a gold vacation, I think it's trying to fix narrative around migration. Just like counter the arguments around, I think the around migration. We have a population in Europe is aging. We need a lot of investment. Totally, we need another time. I think having this narrative around immigration is really good. I think hopefully has really understood that. So yeah, that's my reaction on that. It's yes, the government is going into the wrong direction, but yes, that's good. One hundred percent agree.
Please keep it short.
Yeah, just to mention that you're right, I will pick up the government to discuss 1.6 billion on migration or 22 billion. How do you do that? How do you cut on migration? People don't depend on economic practices. Gather, you can't really predict that in your budget. So that's a new right that I want to achieve. And I think the difficult thing is that we have like a lonely ally aggregator who will within the council advocate for extreme migration, extreme rising migration policy. Pretty extreme how they're there. And I think our role is within parliament, look for that positive narrative and create public policy.
Thank you.
You can run those directly, so
Please.
so
Ciao.
Ja, dankjewel voor je vraag. Ook van Velen, die speelde in de shift. So yeah, the question about how do you make sure that people from West Flanders or Luxembourg or any other province actually feel more, I would say Belgium, or feel more aligned with the democratic processes of Belgium. I think that comes with the cultural shift. It comes back to the top down. So if you actually see things changing, Bart de Wever speaking French, etc., I think that did a lot for people who were south of the border, where they think, okay, this is a nationalist, but he actually speaks. I do not like his ideology, right? But he does speak French for, what was it, 10 minutes straight. People from the south of the border, they think, oh, maybe there's something happening here in Brussels. Now, on the flip side, this is something that should have happened much more when they were francophone prime ministers, etc. They should have also been able to speak to West Flanders, to Limburg, and I think that that's partly it comes back to what does the minister do, and what can we do? Well, we have to organize. So, I mean, I come from Overijs. Overijs is a very difficult place to run with a sort of pro-Belgian ideology. Yet I got elected. Why? Because if you actually put down the idea, people will also follow. People really like seeing people who are fighting for something, for an ideal. And I think that is something that you should do wherever you are, whether you are in West Flanders or in Luxembourg. If you come up with the idea and then you use the campaign strategies, which you have learned now with Tervuren, and try to use that as a way to get people to be interested in whether it's the European project or, in my case, the Belgian project, then people will be more interested and will also trigger into more effective thoughts. At the end of the day, politics is word to word, word to mouth, word to ear. I don't know exactly how to say it. That is what you get with
Mouth of word.
Mouth of word, exactly. And
Other way around. Word of mouth.
mouth of words. Anyways, go use that. Talk about it. Talk about what's happening in Brussels. If this starts to come down from the bottom on up, that's the better. If it comes from the top on down, that's also not good. U.S. citizens, it has to come from there.
Thank you, Charles. And Susanna, would you like to say something? And then we have a closing round.
Of course, I was really happy to say politics is hard to hard, but I still have a long way to go to become program. I would have just one answer to all the so maybe so starting well, yeah, I didn't answer your question the last time. I thought my co-panelist vote on the Senate. Just to say the point that I think was made at the start is to change the Senate to abolish it, we need to change the constitution. Hence, we're back to the scenario that we explained previously, that it's not looking very likely. So I think that's maybe why there wasn't much response. And then to Gamal, I think my co-panelists have answered it from a very bold perspective. Now, I was trying to read it with my hat of a migration studies scholar back in the day. And so what I looked at was, for example, for how long will wait for integrating so asylum seekers and then refugees in Belgium last for. And I noticed that we're still looking at 5 years of support after refugee status was granted. Please correct me if I misread that in the report, but at least so there's a question of how many people are allowed to find safe refuge in Belgium, and I think there we should be really concerned because indeed there's this tendency to kind of close as many avenues as they can from safe migration. That's really not good. But then what I saw was that the support continues, and so in that sense, I think there's still some pillars. It's not that this government is fundamentally deleting everything, luckily. We should in any case be vocal about that. And then another point that caught my attention was where they said we would pay other European member states for solidarity purposes to integrate asylum seekers. And that sounds exactly as you say, it sounds maybe like baloney, except they say other member states, they don't say outside of the European Union. So maybe it's my brain trying to look for positive signals, but just to say that I think there's still some elements that we can build on and then call this government to account in case that don't do that, right? Like you said it. And now to throw your question on boots on the ground in Ukraine from other European member states. That's an interesting question because I think it relates to a question on are we going to have European boots in the first place? Are we going to have a European army in the first place? And if not now, then when? So probably, yes, we're going to have some sort of a European army pilot project, I would say. If there will be a ceasefire, then it makes sense to safeguard it. And so maybe that's what will happen going forward. I don't think that member states alone will necessarily deploy their own troops in that sort of format. So maybe it would be via a European mechanism. Um, yeah. And then on clientelism, unfortunately, not only a Belgian problem, but maybe, I mean, there is this aspect of not accumulating functions in Belgium, and somehow it doesn't fully apply. So I don't really get that. Like, on one hand, you shouldn't be accumulating a bunch of functions as Belgian politicians, and then it turns out they are accumulating a bunch of functions and doing exactly that. So maybe there's some ways to reinforce that principle, yeah.
Thank you, Susanna. And with that being said, would you like to do your final sentence, your ending note?
Yeah.
All of you, and you can start.
Okay. One thing that hasn't been said, and I know it's been on everyone's minds, is that this government, of course, has a massive amount of representation in women. And I think we haven't talked about it because it's just in your face, right? And so there is a huge issue there. We're aligning with the global trend, right? The tech bros, the sort of the war on women, effectively around the world. And I think we need to ask ourselves, and to be ready to step and attack these parties in government by saying, none of you made equal representation your red line. And guess what? You put that because you negotiated so hard for 7 months. And every single one of you, whether it's Farut or whether it's anyone, everyone could have made this the red line, and they did not. Which means that when they run their lists, which are like 50-50, because it's mandatory, right? They don't actually need them. We see what we mean in this vision of government. So I think that's the point that both can push. And of course, we need to also push independence. So things like everyone who's been investing resources and increasing women participation in the function. But yeah, I mean, this is a huge problem. And so these five parties are, I think, very easy to tackle now. Yeah.
Thank you. Master Zana. Who would like to go next?
Who's showing that?
Charles, would you like to?
I'll go back on the Belgium side. I think that today we have a nationalist prime minister in Belgium organized because tomorrow we have a nationalist commission president in Europe.
It's always hard to know what you want to say in a closing statement, but I would like to comment again on this lack of women within the government. I think, yes, so I'm looking at the constitutional perspective. Constitution, how can we have a Belgian constitution that says that within a government you just need men and women and that's it, and that you don't need equality and you don't need the same number of citizens? I think before even looking at the content, just the way this government was formed, this idea of, that's also the problem of the power that the political party, especially the president of the political party have in Belgium, is that they can designate whoever they want in the government, and so they will likely designate men, and we should not be that way, and I wish there would have been a leadership to really say, okay, if you're sending two ministers, it must be one woman, it must be and one man. But this is something that is more. Let's take a broader picture. Exactly what happened with the Commission, where von der Leyen asked each member state to send two candidates, one man and one woman, and then most of the member states decided to only send one, and most of them sent men. And I hope we get it done.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Those remarks, first thing would be there's a huge potential in the Belgium landscape of all. We have the Southern Liberal Party with a dramatically shifting right. The Green Party with ideologically sometimes anti-technology, anti-innovation in a way. So let's focus. And then you have the Social Democrats on the Spanish side who are shifting to the right as well. So I think there's really a strong potential for both. You really think about it, how to communicate, how to be present for the coming 4 years and a half in the public debate, and probably earlier on, we will have like the same in on the Norwegian side over there, and now on the bouquet has shifted to the right. Ecolo is even more like dogmatic as ever, or more than they've ever been, I would say. So we, as science-based, innovative, progressive, green, liberal, with a strong social heart party should be present. And I think we can really work on that. The second thing is, we're in the European Parliament, we're with 25 people who are specialists across the board. Use us, we can work together, we are there, we are approachable, our doors are always open, reach out, find us on LinkedIn. For everything, whatever you could imagine, we're happy to work together.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for fantastic speakers.
Onder de microfoon, gewoon het microfoon. Met microfoon. Ja, allebei. Dus de microfoon is voor de zaal. Ja, dat wel. Jij wilt een slide ook, hè? Niet lang, maar dan. Ja. Direct niet zien. Ja, maar u gaat hier staan. Ja.
Okay. Is that on?
Ja, staat dan.
Okay. Thank you very much to Paulo and also to the participants of the panel discussion. We announce the newly elected board members. I have a very small bit of information to share in name of the Flemish local chapters. And I hope to also extend our colleagues from Brussels within this story. And hopefully we can also inspire the colleagues from Wallonia. Two things I've heard today was the importance of unity within Volt, but also the importance of the local chapters and the things that can happen through the local chapters. On Monday, last Monday, we had a first online meeting with the leads of the local chapters in Flanders. And we formulated two goals for the coming year. First goal is that we want to be more visible concerning reactions to relevant local news items. Because now something happens, we do not react, but I think the need is felt to do this. And another one is that we want to bring together our ideas and our energy in a so-called task force with the volunteers to help support the other local chapters to make things happen regionally, to make things happen locally, to organize events, to organize meetings, not only to bring together the existing, the present members of Volt, also, most importantly, to attract new members of Volt, to attract new female members of Volt, so that the next time we have a GA, that we need a room that is much bigger than this one. But now I'd like to give the microphone to Joachim to announce the new board members.
All right, so the results are in. Dus geen verrassing hier, pas de surprise. Because there were only confirmation votes, but all people have been confirmed. So congratulations, Emeric, Bram, and Frank.
Next one is a bit more anticipated, I think. So here we have the results of the non-designated board, and all women have been confirmed. And because of that, the male positions are only two, and those go to Giorgio and Melvin. And unfortunately, Gamal got 2 points too little to get in. I would still want to congratulate also Gamal with still a very good result. And then last but not least, the two commissions. Unfortunately, I got a message just today from that she's withdrawing her candidacy. So unfortunately, she will not be in the arbitration commission. But all the other candidates, Richard and Giraud, and also for the electoral commission, Radek, Niels, and André were confirmed. So congratulations to all of you. And now I would like to get all the people who were freshly elected on the stage, and also the incumbent board members, please.
Voor jou staan? Dan
Thank you. We have a microphone to give our.
not much to say except thank you very much for your presentation.
Indeed, thank you very much, and let's make Volt bigger, better, and more present in the political space.
Yeah, thanks for your trust. 100% is listed it. And I think in the next week, the news should start to get up. And the big Volt, as you said, bigger, better. Thank you for your trust. And then let's make Belgium purple together.
Thank you very much, and I hope that next time, it will be gather where not one woman, but one man, and where the
Thank you. Action is starting next week, 18 October, 15 February, concert for Ukraine, 23 February, 2030, demonstration for Ukraine, 24 February, at 1:30, Plaza Istanbul. I want to see 1,000 people demonstrating for Ukraine. And Natalia, you know this together, right? Yeah, but the good is it's on the faces. She organized it. Thank you all for your comments. I'm not going to thank Joachim and Daniel. Yeah. Yeah. I can also answer you. And also thank you on the secretary. Maybe please a big round of applause for Simon. Well, thank you all. I fully trust that you will do a great team. I'm wishing you for the future. Now, let's back to you. I think it's loud. I'm not sure. I won't be those flowers. It's a big round of applause for Martin, Napa, and
It's not good. I think you can just take it.
they are mostly board and the recognition.
Can I interfere, Paolo? Yeah, obviously we have some communication issues because I have also something for the members of the board who are no longer candidates. So maybe first of all, I think if you have done for boards in the last years, so you can what yeah, now I have to run back and forth, but I have also want to welcome you and for very much.
Yeah.
Move in a little bit. I think we have to do a little bit more to the back. Yeah, and the top ones on the back. Maybe each you should also. So hold them to the
Okay, thank you all for coming, and hopefully we can see each other again next time with lots of more people. But for those who do not want to go home yet and who want to chat with each other, the party goes on in the Co-hub Brewery. The location will be shared on WhatsApp. Or you can also just walk together and join all the other people who will go there. I think it's about a 10-minute walk from here. A 10-minute walk. Okay, see you there. Thank you and bye bye. And oh, sorry.
Wait a second. Don't leave yet. We want everyone to take your belongings and clean up. The bar only opens at 5, so you can be very slow. We can have some talk. One last thing I want to mention. Last thing I'm going to mention on the GA is volunteer. Help out. Go to the new board. They need your support. Go to them and say, I want to help you. This way or another. Everyone is welcome because we all together shape home. Last thing I'm going to say. Yeah, and so there is coffee and food there for everyone to take. We have enough food, so take some. And Anushka, the first woman chair of the GA. I hope she will.
Yeah. Now I'm really closing the assembly. I was stepping in this place. I'm really sorry. So thank you for coming and see you next time. See you.